Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Crochet by Katie Humes. Today I'm really excited to go over with you how to make a shell stitch or a V-stitch. This stitch I have used so many times, so I am super excited to show it to you because it is a very common stitch, especially in making baby dresses and also blankets and other things that you could make a lot in crochet. So first, we're going to go over the difference in a V-stitch and a shell stitch, and I will go ahead and show you. So what I'm going to do, this is Minty yarn. It's Red Heart with Love. Sorry, that's probably upside down. Red Heart with Love, Minty yarn. I'm using a 5mm crochet hook for this tutorial, but as always, you can use whatever hook size you need and whatever yarn size you need for your pattern. So let's go ahead and make a slip knot. Bloop. And let's chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 9, 10. And I lied, we're gonna chain 15. 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Alrighty, so just get yourself a foundation chain to work with, and we're going to start with a V-stitch. Now a V-stitch is comprised, I did not know this until recently, so I am learning along with you out of a book. I'll show you real fast. I am learning out of this book, The Complete Book of Crochet Stitch Designs, 500 Classic and Original Patterns by Linda P. Schapper. You see that? Anyways, I am learning these stitches along with you. And so if you're wondering, where are you learning these stitches, or where are you learning? Because some of these stitches I have never done before. But this one I have done, but I did not know this. So a V-stitch is comprised of 2 double crochets into the same stitch. So that means you go into the same stitch. You would put 2 double crochets into the same stitch, with or without a chain space in between. But it's only 2 and 2. 3 or more double crochets in there creates the shell. So let's just show you what it's talking about. You're going to yarn over, and we're going to skip the first 2 chains, and we're going to double crochet into this chain, and we're going to do a V-stitch first. So yarn over, pull up a loop, and you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That is your double crochet. Now to make a V-stitch, you could chain 1 and double crochet back down into that same stitch. Alright, and then you would just do double crochet into the next one, double crochet into the next one, and then you could do another V-stitch if you wanted. So you would do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and that gives you the V that it's talking about. Woo! You could also, so many ways you could do this, you guys. You could also, so here's our first V-stitch, you could also chain 1, skip a stitch, and do a V-stitch down into this next one. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And then you would have a row of V-stitches. So that's a V-stitch with a chain space in between. Here's a V-stitch without. So I've gone all the way back. I'll go all the way back again to my foundation chain. Just pull it out a little. It's a little looser, but that's okay. So we're going to skip 2, and we're going to do a V-stitch down into the 3rd chain along. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. That's your first double crochet. Now instead of putting a chain space in that, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, whoopsie, yarn over, pull through 2. And that is another way to do a V-stitch. Also, when I'm making hats, that's called an increase round, when you do 2 stitches into 1 stitch. 2 stitches into 1 chain. So you can crochet another double crochet, and then you could do another V-stitch if you needed it. So V-stitch, double crochet without the chain, double crochet into the same chain space. So I hope that makes sense. So that's the V-stitch. Now the difference between the V-stitch and the chain stitch, what this book is saying is that you have V-stitches are only 2 double crochets into 1 stitch, but a shell stitch is going to be 3 double crochets into the same stitch, 3 or more. So if that's true, then I just made a shell. 1, 2, 3 double crochets into the same stitch. Now let's go ahead and start back up at the top, bloop, 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 and let's work on a shell stitch, a 4 double crochet shell stitch. And let's do a shell stitch all the way across and make a pretty little design. So we have our foundation chain of 15. We're going to yarn over, insert our hook into the 3rd chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now I'm going to do a couple of double crochets into their own stitches before I do a shell. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch. We're going to do another double crochet. Now let's go ahead and do a shell. We've done 2 on the end, so we're going to do, for this shell, we're going to do 4 double crochets into the next stitch. And when you're doing a shell or a V-stitch, it's important that you do the same pattern on every shell, or it could make your pattern look strange. So I've done shell stitches for scarves too, and that was really awesome, but I got to one, like half of my scarf, and then I had messed up on the pattern of the shell, and it wasn't too noticeable, but it was definitely noticeable enough for me to notice that I messed up on that shell, and I could see it out of the whole pattern, because I you know, not everyone would probably see that, but I saw it and I was like, oh man, I messed up on one shell, and it was like 10 rows back, and I was like, okay. But so it's important to do your pattern exactly the same. So if you're doing a 4 shells stitch, then make sure it's 4 every time. If you're doing 5, make sure it's 5 every time. Normally I do 3 or 5. I usually work with odd numbers, but today I'm just going to show you the 4th stitch because that's what's in this book. So to do the shell, the 4 double crochet shell, we're going to yarn over. And a lot of times you'll skip the next one because it's going to be making a pretty pattern. So we'll just practice that because that's good practice. So we'll skip 1 chain, and we're going to insert our hook into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now we're going to do that 3 more times for 4 double crochets into that designated chain. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And again, so that was our 2nd double crochet into that chain space, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is 3 double crochets into that chain, yarn over, insert your hook, whoops, lost it, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And you can see it makes this pretty little design. So now let's skip the next chain since we skipped it on the other side of there. And we'll put 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And now we will do another shell. So we're going to skip the one right next to we're going to skip this chain, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Do that 3 more times. Now we're going to skip that next chain because we've got 4 double crochets into the same stitch making our shell. We're going to skip the next one and do 2 double crochets. 1 into the next 2 stitches so they're in their own stitch. 2. And I wasn't sure, I didn't really do any math before I started going, but I have 2 left, so I'm gonna actually just do double crochets all the way to the end, and then I'll show you how to turn as well. So that would be 4 double crochets right there. I know it doesn't match the other side. I should have done some math before I hopped on to the film. Okay, and so it looks a little funny, but at the end of a dress, so when you're making baby clothes, these can make some really pretty ruffly effect at the end of a dress. So that's pretty. Or if you're making a scarf, you're going to need to make sure that you have the same amount of stitches to make sure that it starts evening it out. And a lot of times the scarf patterns I found were, they had it written out for you already. So it would say, skip 3 chains and then do your shell, skip 3, do your shell. And so that way, or chain 3, skip 3, and it has it laid out for you is what I'm trying to say. So let's go ahead and turn, and I'll show you how to make shells on top of shells if you want. But like I was saying, let's see how this isn't just nice and wavy if it was the end of a baby dress. Kind of makes it ruffly. It's really pretty, a really pretty technique to learn. So to turn, we're going to chain up 2 since we're working with double crochets, and we're going to turn our work. Now we're going to skip this very first one, and we're going to put a double crochet into the next 3 stitches. I'm just going to do a chain on top of, a shell on top of the shell so you can see that. So I've just done 3 double crochets into the next 3 stitches. Now, because a shell makes you have more stitches, this is why I do odd numbers, because usually if you have 5 in the shell, you can work on the 3rd stitch and it'll be exactly over it. Now I remember why I do odd numbers. Okay, so because we don't have an odd number, we're going to work down in the middle of the shell. Instead of, usually I work in the top of the stitches, but because we have a 4 shell, we don't want to make it off-centered unless you wanted to put like 2 shells on top, which you could do. You could do a shell on top of the 2nd stitch and then a shell on top of the 4th stitch. That would work. But instead of doing that, I'm going to show you how it looks to put a shell on top of a shell. So we'll work in between the stitches right here. Alright, so let's go ahead and chain 1, yarn over, insert your hook down into that space. I don't really know what to call it. It's not a chain space, it's just in between the first 2 double crochets and the last 2 double crochets of the shell. So it's the very center of the shell. pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then do 3 more double crochets into that space. I guess I could call it the shell space, the center of the shell. Alright, and because we chained one over here, we're going to chain one on the other side of the shell. Like I was saying, it's important to keep your patterns matching so they look uniformed when you're doing shells. Alright, and then we did 2 double crochets in between. I don't know if you remember that, but we're going to work down into those stitches. So a double crochet there and a double crochet there. My yarn is getting a little tangled. 1 second. Okay, now we'll chain one and we're going to work in the middle of this shell that we made over here. So find your stitches again. You have 1, 2, 3, and 4 double crochets. So you'll go in between the first 2 and the last 2, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert your hook. Again, do this 3 more times. So you have your total will be 4 double crochets. Oh, here comes that knot. Alright, 4 double crochets into that shell. And you can see it's creating this interesting pattern right on top of each other. So we'll chain 1, and then at the end of this we had 2. I think we worked 2. Why does it kind of, oh yeah, 1, 2, and then your last 2 are right here. So you'll see, you'll work into these V's right here. Double crochet, and my work is curling because I'm not really following a pattern, I'm just showing you. And so every time I make a shell, it increases my number, so it's gonna fan out. If I were to keep doing that pattern, it would just keep fanning out like that because we're increasing every time we make a shell. We're adding 2 more stitches to the round. So again, at the end of a dress, that's kind of fun, but if you're doing a scarf and you need it straight, you need to really pay attention and follow your pattern. So, but that is how you do a shell stitch and a shell stitch on top of each other. It's kind of pretty, kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you understand the difference between V-stitches and shell stitches now, because I did not know there was a difference. I just thought, they both look like a V and they both look pretty. So a shell has 3 or more double crochets into the same stitch, but a V-stitch will only have 2 stitches into the same stitch. Whether there's a chain space in between that V or not, it's still a V-stitch with just 2 double crochets. That's what I understand from what I just barely read. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, if you like my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you liked this video, if it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And I hope you're also enjoying my series on how to do these more beginner type stitches so that you can begin to learn to read patterns and begin to make beautiful creations of your own. I would love to see any project you're working on, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I will talk to you later. Bye!